Chapter 24. No one goes there anymore. It's too crowded.
Some statements make no sense at all, but are accepted as gospel anyway. A good example is the title of this essay, a comment purportedly made by Yogi Berra, whose command of the absurd is legendary. Yogi often displays an insight into the obvious. You can observe a lot by just watching. When you come to a fork in the road, take it. If you can't imitate him, don't copy him. A nickel ain't worth a dime anymore. Business is fabulous, but my customers complain they hear my ads too much. Okay, that last one wasn't Yogi. It was a client of ours, and he wasn't trying to be funny. Actually, a lot of our clients hear complaints about their ads from their customers. As you might expect, it's always the most successful clients. Isn't it strange that although people complain bitterly that they hear an ad too often, no one ever complains of reading an ad too often? We commonly recommend radio and television, but rarely newspaper. Because you can close your eyes, but you can't close your ears. You hear even when you're not listening, but you don't see unless you're watching. This is why you can sing hundreds of songs you never intended to learn, but you can't name the color of the car that sits in the driveway just 5 houses down the street from your home, even though you drive past it several times a week. There are only 2 kinds of ads, echoic, which is sound, and iconic, which is sight. Echoic ads are far more intrusive than iconic ads. It is because of the intrusive nature of sound that people often complain about ads on the radio, but never about those in print. The problem with using sound is that echoic ads require intense repetition to be effective. The reader of an iconic or print ad can choose to study the fine print or read an ad multiple times, but she can also choose not to read it at all. The listener to an echoic ad is not allowed this control. She cannot hear your ad a second, third, or fourth time unless you decide she should. To gain the miraculous results that echoic advertising offers, you must repeat your ads relentlessly. As Yogi says, if people aren't complaining about your ads, you must be doing something wrong. Okay, I lied about it being Yogi Berra, but it's true anyway.
Chapter 25. But it's a dry heat.
It sure is hot here in Arizona. Yes, but it's a... If you had 3 guesses to finish that sentence, you could do it and have 2 guesses left over, right? The answer is predictable. Predictability. It's what makes advertising sound like advertising, and it's one of the biggest reasons ad campaigns fail. Mouthing meaningless cliches, making unsubstantiated claims, and mindlessly assuming the customer is willing to believe whatever is said are the classic mistakes of advertisers across America. Most advertisers want their ads to be smooth, polished, professional, and clever. Unfortunately, the public no longer trusts smooth, polished, professional, or clever advertising. You know you've written a good ad when it doesn't sound like an ad. Face it, your competitor believes most of the same things about his business that you believe about yours, and you're both trying to lead the customer to the same conclusion. You'll probably make the same claims, use the same logic, and offer the same assurances in your advertising. The problem is, the customer has heard it all before and doesn't believe either of you. To be persuasive, your ads must be frank, direct, and believable. Your ad is believable only when the listener agrees with it. So how do you make the listener agree with you? Tell her what she already knows or suspects. Remind her of things you know she has experienced. Tell her her perception is accurate, and she'll probably agree with whatever you have to say. Anyone who agrees with her can't possibly be wrong. Build on the foundation of a common perspective. Try to see your customer's needs as she sees her needs. Look at your product through her eyes, and you may discover how to speak to her felt needs. Walk a mile in her shoes before you talk to her about how her feet feel. Okay, the feet thing was a dumb analogy, but I think you get it anyway.
Chapter 26. Walking into Darkness.
When you walk into a pitch-dark room, your first instinct is always to turn on the light. But wouldn't you prefer the room to be well lit when you entered? Of course you would. Then please explain why we leave these incredibly inconsiderate phone messages for each other that say nothing more than, "Have him call me." In effect, "Have him call me" says, "Tell him I want him to be ready for anything. I won't give him the courtesy of telling him how to prepare for our conversation." Returning this kind of phone call feels very much like walking into a dark room. Am I the only person who hates this? Like good telephone etiquette, good advertising never asks the customer to walk into darkness. A good ad will describe in detail exactly what the customer can expect when he arrives at your place of business. No person takes action until he has seen himself taking such action in his mind. We always imagine doing a thing before we do it. Causing your prospective customer to imagine a visit to your store is the highest goal of advertising. A good ad artfully describes what awaits the customer. Do your ads enticingly describe what awaits the customer? Do your ads create a series of mental pictures? To be effective, your ads must cause the customer to see himself doing what you want him to do. If you're patient and persistent, he will someday transfer this imagined experience into actual experience. He will finally do what he has seen himself do so many times. The longer you keep it up, the better it works. Conversely, the style of advertising that whips the customer into immediate action works less and less well the longer you continue it. Do you have the patience to invest in doing it right? Can you write ads that will create the required series of mental images? If you cannot, find someone who can. It is both classy and considerate to tell a receptionist what you would like to discuss with the boss. It is both classy and profitable to describe to your customer what he will experience the moment he steps through your door. No one likes walking into darkness.
Chapter 27. Hardwood, Hammer, and Nail.
The mind of your prospective customer is like a seasoned piece of hardwood. Your message is like a nail. The rhythmic strokes of the hammer represent the number of times your message, or your unique selling proposition, is heard by the prospect. Sleep is the hammer's claw. Sleep, God's gift to the human race, purging our minds of the noise of the day. Sleep, the eraser of all advertising. Your goal is to drive the nail through the board and then clench it on the other side. Messages that are clenched are remembered for a lifetime. Tap, tap goes the hammer. But during the night, the claw pulls the nail back out of its little hole. The following day, you find nothing more than a faint indentation in the board. The nail is no longer in it. Your message is forgotten. Using the hole you started the previous day, you position the nail again. Tap, tap goes the hammer. But again falls the veil of darkness. Eyes close, and the claw does its work once more. Day after day this scene is repeated, but ever so slowly, the hole gets deeper. Driving the nail of your unique selling proposition into the hardwood of the mind is like climbing a muddy mountain. 3 steps forward, 2 steps back, over and over again. The frustration is simply too much. You believe advertising should pay off immediately. It must be time to change the USP because this one doesn't seem to be working. But to change your unique selling proposition is to start a new nail in a completely different spot on the board. The hole in which you have invested is now wasted. Why did you do this? Do you think there's a soft spot on the board somewhere? There is not. You can sharpen the nail with better writing, but there are no soft spots on the board. Stay with the hole you've started. Sharpen the nail.
Press on. Nothing in the world can take the place of persistence. Ray Kroc.
Chapter 28. A Time for True Lies.
There are certain individuals who always seem to shout for perfect accuracy in advertising. But when emotions are involved, can there be such a thing as black and white certainty? The unique ability to tell the truth a little more powerfully than what is completely accurate is a skill that has long been used in places far beyond the field of advertising. 3 of the most famous statues in the world were sculpted inaccurately on purpose, so that they might more accurately communicate reality. Myron's discus thrower shows us a majestic athlete in mid-throw, except that from such a position no athlete could ever expect to throw a discus more than a few feet. In reality, he'd be lucky not to fall over. Yet the discus thrower has been one of the world's most beloved sculptures for more than 1,500 years. You've never seen a truly accurate sculpture of a man throwing a discus because every artist knows it would be a monumentally boring piece of art. The Thinker by Auguste Rodin reveals a man lost in deep contemplation, except that Rodin shows us this thinker with his right elbow resting on his left knee. A very uncomfortable and unnatural position for anyone trying to concentrate. It's unlikely that any human in the history of the world has ever chosen to sit naked in such an uncomfortable position while working out his problems. Even the great Michelangelo sculpted the head of his immortal David, too large for the body, because Michelangelo, like Rodin and Myron before him, knew artistic exaggeration was utterly essential to the realistic portrayal of the human drama. Does the great Norman Rockwell illustrate the real America on the cover of the Saturday Evening Post, or does he show us America as it ought to be? An America that each of us sees ever in our hearts, though never with our eyes. If it sounds like I'm trying to defend the highly criticized practice of overstatement in the fine art of advertising, well, perhaps I am. But before you condemn all advertising professionals as liars, tricksters, hucksters, and charlatans, consider for a moment a stanza from a popular song. If you took all the girls I knew when I was single and brought them all together for one night, it could never match my sweet imagination, 'cause everything looks worse in black and white. When the goal is to pierce through the tough, emotion-repellent fabric we call intellect, so that we might speak more deeply to the needs of the heart, it appears to me that the great painters, sculptors, illustrators, and musicians point us toward the use of artistic exaggeration, 'cause everything looks worse in black and white.